Somewhere beneath the cold, gray waters of the Bering Strait lies the answer to one of the oldest questions in human history. How did people first reach the Americas, a landmass separated from the rest of humanity by two vast oceans? The answer isn't a boat, and it isn't a myth. It's a strip of land, now completely underwater, that once connected Siberia to Alaska so completely you could have walked from one continent to the other without ever seeing the sea. Geologists call it Beringia, and at its peak it wasn't a narrow bridge at all. It was a landmass roughly the size of Texas and Alaska combined, a genuine subcontinent hiding in plain sight beneath one of the coldest, most unforgiving stretches of ocean on Earth. For decades, the story seemed simple. Humans crossed this bridge, walked south, and populated two entire continents. But the deeper scientists dig into the genetics and the archaeology, the stranger and more unsettling the real story becomes. Because the evidence increasingly suggests these people didn't just cross Beringia. Some of them may have been stranded there for thousands of years, going nowhere at all. To understand why, you first need to understand what an ice age actually does to a coastline. During the last glacial maximum, roughly 26,000 years ago, enormous ice sheets locked away staggering amounts of the world's water, freezing it solid across North America, Europe, and Asia. Because so much water was trapped on land, global sea levels dropped by more than 100 meters compared to today. Picture the ocean pulled back like a curtain, and where the Bering Strait now sits, cold and gray between two continents, dry land emerged instead. This wasn't a thin, fragile crossing point. It was an enormous, self-contained region, stretching nearly 1,000 miles from north to south, covered in its own unique ecosystem that scientists now call the Mammoth Steppe. This landscape wasn't the icy wasteland you might picture. It was a cold, dry grassland, surprisingly productive, capable of supporting massive herds of grazing animals across its open plains. Woolly mammoths moved across Beringia in genuine herds, alongside steppe bison, wild horses, and saiga antelope, an entire community of Ice Age megafauna thriving in conditions that would kill most modern animals within days. This was the ecosystem that greeted the very first humans who ventured onto this vanished land. Picture a small band of hunters, dressed head to toe in tailored animal hide and fur, moving carefully across an open grassland beneath a pale, low Arctic sun. The wind here never really stops, cutting across the open plain with a force that would be unbearable without the sewn, layered clothing these people had already perfected. Ahead, a herd of woolly mammoths grazes calmly on frozen grass, their long curved tusks sweeping snow aside to reach the vegetation beneath. This is not a barren wasteland at the edge of the world. This is functioning, productive land, rich enough to support human life for generation after generation. And that's exactly where the mystery begins to deepen. Because genetic evidence recovered from both modern indigenous populations and ancient burial sites tells a story that doesn't match the simple, straightforward crossing most people assume happened. If humans simply walked across Beringia and continued south without stopping, their DNA should closely resemble the populations they left behind in Siberia. But it doesn't. Native American genomes carry genetic markers that appear nowhere else on Earth. Mutations and variations that simply don't exist in Siberian or East Asian populations. These genetic differences are significant, and more importantly, they take time to accumulate. Lots of time. Based on the rate at which these mutations naturally occur, geneticists have calculated that the ancestors of Native Americans must have been genetically isolated, cut off from other populations, for somewhere between 6,000 and 10,000 years. 10,000 years. Not a season. Not a single difficult winter. An entire population isolated for a span of time longer than the whole of recorded human history. Scientists now call this the Beringian Standstill Hypothesis, and it fundamentally reshapes how we should imagine this vanished land. This wasn't a highway that people simply walked across in a single generation, eager to reach the promised warmth of the Americas beyond. For thousands of years, an entire human population appears to have lived, hunted, and raised children directly on Beringia itself, effectively trapped between two continents, unable or unwilling to move in either direction. So here's the question worth sitting with for a moment. If Beringia was truly a bridge, Why would anyone stay on it for 10,000 years instead of simply continuing forward? The answer might lie in exactly what was waiting on the other side. To the west lay Siberia, locked beneath thick, expanding ice sheets that made travel increasingly difficult as the glacial maximum tightened its grip on the northern world. To the south and east lay something potentially even worse: the Laurentide and Cordilleran ice sheets, two massive walls of ice that, at their peak, fused together and sealed off virtually all of interior North America. In simple terms, the door into the Americas may have been completely locked, frozen shut, for thousands of years, even after people had already reached Beringia itself. They weren't choosing to stay. They may have had absolutely nowhere else to go. This reframes the entire narrative in a genuinely striking way. Beringia wasn't simply a corridor people rushed through on their way to somewhere better. It may have been an entire, self-sufficient homeland, a place where a distinct, isolated culture formed, adapted, and thrived for longer than the entire span of ancient Egyptian civilization. Children were born there who never once saw Siberia. Grandparents died there having never seen the Americas. An entire, unique way of life developed and disappeared on a stretch of land that no longer physically exists at all today. And this raises an important, sobering point about archaeology itself. Almost nothing definitively survives to directly prove any of this happened, because the physical evidence of that entire world is now sitting under more than 50 meters of frigid ocean water. This is precisely why the archaeological side of the Beringia story remains so genuinely contested among researchers today. Unlike Gabbero or Sundaland, where at least some physical evidence survives above modern waterlines, most of central Beringia itself is now permanently submerged beneath the Bering Strait. Scientists cannot simply walk out and dig where the standstill population would have actually lived, hunted, and died. Instead, researchers are forced to piece together this vanished world using indirect evidence gathered from its surviving margins, sites in Siberia to the west, and sites in Alaska and the Yukon to the east. One of the most important of these sites is Bluefish Caves, located in Canada's Yukon territory, where archaeologists recovered animal bones bearing cut marks that some researchers argue were made by human tools more than 24,000 years ago. If that dating holds up under continued scrutiny, it would place humans in the Beringia region significantly earlier than most traditional timelines had previously assumed. Further west, at a site called Swan Point in interior Alaska, archaeologists uncovered clear stone tools and worked mammoth ivory dating to roughly 14,000 years ago, some of the earliest confirmed evidence of human activity in the region east of the vanished land bridge itself. Taken together, these scattered sites suggest a genuinely long, complicated human presence across the wider Beringia region, spanning many thousands of years, rather than one single, decisive crossing event. But there's a deeper complication here too, one that has quietly overturned an entire generation of textbook explanations. For decades, scientists assumed people finally left Beringia through something called the ice-free corridor, a narrow gap that supposedly opened up between the two massive North American ice sheets as the climate slowly began to warm. The problem is, when researchers actually studied the ecology of that corridor in detail, they found something deeply inconvenient for the traditional theory. The ice-free corridor may not have become biologically usable, meaning capable of supporting plants, animals, and therefore human travelers, until roughly 13,000 years ago. And that creates a serious, genuinely awkward problem, because archaeological sites far to the south, in places like Monte Verde in modern-day Chile, have been reliably dated to at least 14,500 years ago. That means humans were already living deep in South America before the supposed ice-free corridor even existed as a usable route at all. So how did they actually get there? This single contradiction helped shatter the old, simple story completely. And it's exactly where the second major theory of this entire mystery enters the picture. Many researchers now believe people didn't primarily walk south through the continental interior at all. Instead, they may have traveled by boat, hugging the Pacific coastline in a slow, careful journey now nicknamed the Kelp Highway. Beneath the melting edge of the retreating ice sheets, a narrow, biologically rich coastal strip may have remained open and passable even while the continental interior stayed completely sealed off. Dense kelp forests growing along this coastline would have supported extraordinarily abundant marine life, seals, fish, shellfish, and seabirds, offering a reliable, renewable food source for people willing to travel carefully by simple watercraft rather than on foot. Under this model, the descendants of the Beringian Standstill population didn't wait patiently for an inland corridor to open at all. They quietly slipped south along the coast instead, following the resource-rich shoreline itself, likely centuries or even millennia before the interior ice sheets ever fully parted. This coastal theory helps explain the Monte Verde puzzle rather elegantly, but it creates its own serious, frustrating problem for archaeologists working today. If people really did travel primarily by boat, hugging the ancient Pacific coastline the entire way, then the physical evidence of exactly where they camped, fished, and lived would now sit deep underwater. Sea levels have risen so dramatically since the end of the Ice Age that the entire ancient coastline these travelers likely followed is now submerged, buried under tens of meters of modern Pacific Ocean water. In a very real, frustrating sense, we may be searching for a fundamentally coastal migration route using only inland archaeological sites that were, by their nature, deliberately located away from the very coastline that mattered most to these early travelers. So where does that genuinely leave us today, after decades of careful, painstaking research? The honest answer is that scientists broadly agree on the big picture now, even while they continue fighting hard over the crucial details. Nearly everyone studying this topic accepts that ancestral Native American populations spent a substantial, extended period of time isolated somewhere in the wider Beringia region, likely for several thousand years at an absolute minimum. Nearly everyone also now agrees that people were almost certainly using some form of coastal route, at least in part, given the serious timing problems the old ice-free corridor theory ultimately created for itself. What remains genuinely, seriously contested is the finer detail. Exactly how long the standstill period actually lasted, precisely where on the vanished landmass these people were primarily concentrated, and exactly when the very first successful movements south of the ice sheets truly began to occur. There's also a genuinely fascinating cultural dimension to this story that deserves real attention here. If the standstill hypothesis holds up under continued scrutiny, then the ancestors of every single indigenous nation across North, Central, and South America once shared a single, unified, isolated culture, living together on a landmass that no longer exists in any physical form today. Every distinct language family, every regional tradition, every unique technology eventually developed across two entire continents ultimately traces back to this one small, isolated founding population. Some researchers have gone so far as to argue that the incredible genetic and cultural diversity we now see across the Americas may have first begun taking shape right there on Beringia itself, long before anyone ever crossed south into the warmer, more familiar landscapes we associate with early American prehistory today. This turns Beringia into something far more significant than a simple geographic footnote buried in old textbooks. It becomes, in a very real sense, the true ancestral homeland for tens of millions of people alive across the Americas today, a homeland that has been completely, permanently erased from the physical map by nothing more dramatic than slowly rising post-glacial seawater. Unlike Sundaland, where scattered island peaks still remain visible above the modern waterline, Beringia's central heartland offers almost nothing left to see from the surface today. The Bering Strait that now separates Russia from Alaska is, on a clear day, barely 53 miles wide at its absolute narrowest crossing point. Two small, rocky islands called the Diomedes still sit right in the middle of that narrow strait, close enough that residents on either island can genuinely see each other across the water on a clear day. Those two small islands may be the very last visible remnants of the vast, vanished continent that once connected two entire hemispheres of the world. And this raises one final, genuinely haunting question worth sitting with as this story comes to a close. If an entire founding population, the direct ancestors of tens of millions of people, could live, adapt, and quietly vanish beneath the waves without leaving behind a single visible trace on any modern map, how many other lost chapters of the human story are we still missing entirely? How many other Beringias are out there right now, sitting silently beneath the world's oceans, holding on to secrets about who we are and precisely where every one of us truly came from? Do you think the standstill really lasted the full 10,000 years the genetics suggest? Or do you think the real answer is still waiting to be found, quietly, somewhere out there beneath the cold, gray water of the Bering Strait?